Madam Speaker, by identifying my profession. I'm a geologist, and in my profession there is no senior, there's no instructing, and there's no junior. And Madam Speaker, my observations and my position on these matters have nothing to do with the circumlocutions of law, because I do not pretend to be a lawyer. What I do know is that I have a duty in this job to protect the public interest. Lawyers have been known and continue to be known to be able to argue anything in any direction. The substance, the truth, even the logic of it doesn't have to matter. It is the ability to argue that sometimes wins the matter. And Madam Speaker, I am not here to engage these lawyers in this chamber about law, but I'll engage them on common sense, Madam Speaker. I want to talk first and foremost about the whole question of the grouping of the issues in a miscellaneous bill. The fact that the Minister of Finance has brought a miscellaneous bill, which we commonly call an omnibus bill, covering 3 or 4 or 5 items in the Parliament, all of a sudden is a wrong thing and is to be viewed suspiciously like a hand grenade about to explode in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, let me say very clearly, next year would be, how many years, or this year? I've been in this Parliament a long time. In fact, when I look at the publications of my speeches in the Parliament, I myself am amazed how long I've been in this Parliament and how much I've been involved in the business of this Parliament. And Madam Speaker, throughout my life in this Parliament, in public business, I have always known about miscellaneous legislation, where bills come covering 3 or 4 things. In fact, there's one particular bill where we are amending 17 pieces of law. Because to do what you want to do, you make the amendments. And if it makes sense to bring them all in one bill, you do that. I am not against my colleagues on the other side to see where they could score political points, stir up public discord, and even hatred, you know. I'm not against that at all. If they think that could work for them, fine. Because this thing about cheap political points, there's no such thing as cheap political points. It's political points. If it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. If you think you can score points there, more power to you. But that does not deny me the opportunity to stand on what I believe is common sense and what is in the public's interest. So, Madam Speaker, the person who responded to this omnibus bill today is the member for Couva South. And you had no end of trouble in trying to keep him away from the NIS repetitions. On numerous occasions, he had to be spoken to about repeating a particular point. And accusations, you know. The singular point I gleaned from his presentation is that the government's instructions, or whatever it is, that Venezuelans who are in Trinidad and Tobago and given an opportunity to remain here under conditions that we've set for a year by registering and being allowed to work, that they should not have access to the National Insurance Service. Because if they make payments to that National Insurance Service, they would be entitled to make claims. Madam Speaker, we on the government side have a duty to protect the public interest. That is our job. If the opposition does not want to join us in protecting the public interest, then they're free to do so. Maybe when they were in government, they were protecting the public interest. And if they ever come back in government, they will protect the public interest. But while they're in the opposition, they must not by decibels try to create sensible facts. Madam Speaker, let me explain to you the kinds of benefits that are available to persons who pay money subscribing to the National Insurance Service. Employment injury benefit. Anyone could claim injury benefit if you pay into the insurance service for a year. But these Venezuelans will be here for a year. So it means that they get paid for a year. But to qualify, right? And to qualify, you make a payment. Is it one payment?
Yes, one payment.
So you make one payment. You make one payment. And you can now claim injury benefit.
For a year.
Medical benefit, up to $28,000 per injury. Once you can claim injury benefit. And there's no minimum period of employment. Madam Speaker, if you're sick, the insured person who is sick and unable to work, the insured person must have made a minimum of 10 weekly payments for 13 weeks prior to the illness, and then you could claim benefits. So a Venezuelan could be here and make 13 weeks payment, and then proceed to claim benefits of the insurance service. Madam Speaker, maternity benefits. I saw a couple pictures of Venezuelans in the line, which they seem to be advanced in the family way. Very advanced. Maternity benefit. You make 10 weekly contributions of 13 weeks. And 6 weeks before delivery, you are entitled to claim maternity benefits. Madam Speaker, I am sure that the member for Cuba South is not saying to us that he doesn't want them to claim these benefits if they make the payment. But the law says they will be able to make it. Once they make the benefit. And he's saying that what he is seeing, Madam Speaker, my colleague from Cuba South, because we have said that they should not be allowed to make the benefits, those of us who are protecting the public interest, we are saying don't allow them to make those minimum payments and make these maximum claims. My colleague from Cuba South, he sees the other side of the coin. Because they will not be paying the insurance benefits, they'll be cheaper workers, and this is a ploy to give the business community cheap workers at the expense of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I conclude by saying, any person who is seeing this in the public interest will see that it is the public interest we are protecting by preventing them from making it, and not the other way around. Not the other way around. We are in conspiracy with no one. And persons hire people to suit their businesses and who work well for them. We are not here to dictate to employers who they should hire. And we are responding by having Venezuelans here to a crisis in Venezuela where our nation is making what some believe is a minimum contribution. What we consider is a major contribution. And that is just a matter of circumstance. So these conspiracies and devils that you're all seeing in every behind every tree, it's in your own head. It's in your own head. There's no conspiracy. It's a common sense decision to prevent them from making claims after making minimum payments. So I don't think that my colleagues really believe what they're saying, but they're saying it to incite the population deliberately. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are senior counsel, some of them are all kinds of counsel. Bush lawyer, fireside lawyer, all kinds of things. And they're saying it just to incite the population. We cannot extricate ourselves from the impact of the Venezuelan situation. But they organize people to come to the parliament to shout, Rowley must go. And they couldn't see me going to parliament. I'm going to parliament. You don't have to shout at me. I'm going here to protect the public interest. Madam Speaker, lawyers can argue in circles, argue for and against on the same issue. Somehow, the death of Malcolm Jones and Petrochin stands out to some people as a piece of dry wood in a stream that they're drowning in. And if they hold on to Malcolm Jones, they will survive the drowning. Madam Speaker, when Petrochin, a state company, refused to provide information in that Malcolm James, that Petrochin business matter, it was not the government of Trinidad and Tobago that said, don't provide the information. In fact, I'm head of the government. I only found out when I read the papers. And since then, it is all clear. Petrotrin as a company used its right as a company to say no. At the time when Petrotrin did that, and even up to now, my colleagues on the other side are still saying that that was a wrong decision. But of course, they are using it to accuse the government of hiding information and being in all kinds of conspiracies to protect Malcolm Jones from his $1 billion claim, even though he's dead. All kinds of things you're hearing because Petrotrin did not provide the information in its own right under the Companies Act advised by its senior counsel. And that's how it was until a few minutes ago, when senior counsel from Superior said that the amendment that we are making here, which gives the Attorney General an opportunity to prevent an unnecessary rejection, which could trigger a lawsuit and which could result in taxpayers paying money, that is an infringement of the right of the decision maker who is making the decision to not give it. Madam Speaker, that sounds so convoluted. With your permission, I want to repeat it so the public will understand it. In one breath, when a state company refused to give it, all the argument from my colleagues is that that was a bad thing, it should never have been allowed, and then they use that refusal to infer all kinds of conspiracy theories. And then in the next breath, the leader of those on the other side, senior counsel, coming today to make points and to make case like a high school argument, saying that the new arrangement that we are proposing will infringe on the right of an entity to say no in its own right and not be subject to any interference on the Attorney General. So on one side of your mouth, they must be able to say no and stand on that no. But on the other side of the mouth, you're saying you should have superseded Petrotrin's right to say no. Because if you don't do that, we'll accuse you of conspiracies and all kinds of wrongdoing. What side are you on? What do you really believe? It can't be both. It's either or. It's either an entity has an inherent right to say no and you accept what they've said in their own right, and then don't go on to accuse the government of not making them give it. We've had volumes of newspaper articles and television commentary and public platform statements that Petrotrin didn't give the information because the government stopped them from doing it, even though we tell you a million times we were never involved and there's no information showing the government being involved in a company in its own right saying no. And it is because of those exposures. I, as head of the government, Madam Speaker, said to this country, all over the government system, there are people who have this right to deny the public the information that is being sought. And if you don't find out, and after they say no, you create the environment for the famous and infamous lawyers to sue the state through the Attorney General, and once the suit is filed, the taxpayer now has a major liability. A liability which could have been prevented if the Attorney General was made aware of it and the no was somehow made into a yes if the circumstances warranted that. Madam Speaker, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with the Attorney General having the right to look at it and make a facilitation to say yes when the entity already had said no? Today the opposition leader argued that the entity must be allowed to stand on its decision without let or hindrance. That might be so in law, but in terms of who is paying the taxpayer, that don't make no sense. Because if you could avoid the lawsuit and the legal fees by simply providing the information, why do you want to keep the loophole so the lawyer could sue on the rejection and then come and milk $1 million, and as for that $1 million, you all come here this evening to confuse us about cost and bill. We know the difference between cost and bill, and you are making a case for a production protocol for $1 million. I stand here to represent the taxpayer, and I call that rip-off.
Robbery.
Madam Speaker, there's one, that particular Petrotrin matter that they hold on to for their political life. One particular lawyer wrote a pre-action protocol, where a pre-action protocol is simply a letter saying, I'm wronged in this way, I intend to sue you, what do you have to say about it? You have 18 days, how many days to respond, because I'm going to sue you because I feel I'm wronged. A letter. And it wasn't no judge was involved in that. It was a claim made to an office, and the public officer authorized a payment of $1 million for a letter. And if that is what you all are supporting, okay, let it be known, let it be said that we on this side, we are not supporting that. And with respect to the involvement of the law, a bill can be presented, Madam Speaker, for a matter in the state sector. A bill being presented, and the bill be paid without any recourse to the law, to the court, because the matter could have been withdrawn from the court, and the lawyer's bill is still presented. That is what is going on. So to come here this evening and say that all those matters being paid by taxpayers have judicial oversight, and it's the judge that doing it, poppycock. It is bills being put to public officers, and many of them have gotten into trouble for doing it, Madam Speaker, because we've only just begun.
Yes, sir.
So, Madam Speaker, they've riled up the whole country. 47 groups say, withdraw the bill for consultation. How many groups they have in this country? 407,000. 47 say, withdraw the bill. Madam Speaker, we are here not to fight with anybody. We are here not to beat down anybody. We are here for one purpose. We are here to prevent taxpayers from being exposed to unnecessary lawsuits where taxpayers are made to pay money because there is a gaping loophole in this matter. The Attorney General outlined it this morning. Once a denial is given, when a request is made to a public entity, the person who has made the request has the right, which remains uninfringed, has the right to seek recourse of the court by judicial review to have the court examine the rejection. That remains in place. Once the matter goes to court, the court then says, get the Attorney General informed. So in any case, the Attorney General is going to be informed in the matter, because you sue the Attorney General when you sue the entity.
To decide if he come in the case.
But, Madam Speaker, by not having the opportunity before you reach that stage, all that we are preserving, all that they are defending, is the opportunity for a lawyer to file a lawsuit while the Attorney General's office remains ignorant of the denial. Madam Speaker, all we are here to do is to say, let the Attorney General be informed, because that, as far as we are concerned, is the only place where the public interest can be preserved, where we can avoid the lawsuit being filed. Exactly. Because once the lawsuit is filed, the taxpayer exposure to huge claims for cost payment to the lawyer has already been triggered. What is wrong with that? So all these discussions about how the democracy of the country is being destroyed and the right to get information is being destroyed. Madam Speaker, as head of the government, I've heard those arguments. We came with a bill to the House asking for an extension of the time that the public entity will need. It is now 30 days in law. We had said, okay, 90 days, extreme. In the face of public commentary we said, okay, 45 days. Give them 2 more weeks so that we can more completely give the information. They're still carrying on. Madam Speaker, now, as head of the government, I'm instructing the Attorney General, let the 30 days stand. Right? Let the 30 days stand. Because that is not the primary objective here. The primary objective here is to prevent the loophole where lawyers dig out taxpayers' eye, and that stands. The government stands with that. That's what we came here for. We came here to prevent the Attorney General from being in the dark and not being able to intervene to protect the public from being sued in situations where the matter could be dealt with before it goes to the court. Madam Speaker, we can disagree on that. It is clear that the government sees it that way. There are others who see it differently. We disagree on that. Madam Speaker, I've heard my colleague from Siparia say she looked all over the world. And nowhere is anything like this.
Except Guyana and a whole set of...
Well, all the exceptions don't seem to matter. But Madam Speaker,
Jamaica.
the reason why we are doing it in Trinidad and Tobago is that we look all over the world. And we have seen nowhere else in the world where lawyers are so exploiting the public.
What is her track record?
This morning, they talk about data, Madam Speaker. The data showed that it was about a 0.7 or a 0.8 or anything less than 1% of these matters that were going to court for judicial review. The minute they went into opposition, knowing the loophole being there, it jumped to 18% and growing from under 1% to 18%. Madam Speaker, that kind of rise is a serious albatross around the neck of the taxpayer. And what they're asking us to do is to leave it so.
Let them milk it.
We are saying no, we're not leaving it so. We have the authority to close that loophole, and we will do so today. And as for consultation, the AG asked, what are you going to consult about? To tell me that we should leave it so that the lawyers will continue to exploit us? We have seen it, we know it, it's there. This is the data. And all we are saying, there's a loophole. We have heard today from Siparia, it is not a loophole. It is how the justice system works. But we are not unaware of her position, the Madam Speaker. It was this same member for Siparia who was informed by the AG office what was happening with prisoners and their lawyers, digging out taxpayers' eye, milking taxpayers in a similar fashion, and did absolutely nothing to put an end to it, Madam Speaker. Today it is known as Prison Gate. Today, Madam Speaker, I as Prime Minister of this country, I am now made aware of what is going on in that loophole in FOI matters, and I have instructed the Cabinet to close the loophole. And Madam Speaker, everyone after that is free to go to the court and say that we have done it incorrectly, and if the court so rules, then so be it. But in the meantime, we will intervene to block that loophole that is being exploited at the expense of taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, another matter that was beaten here today was the whole question of the sanctity of privacy at the central bank.
Nonsense.
Madam Speaker, as I told you earlier on, lawyers could argue one thing on Monday and argue something else on Friday. And I'm not anti-lawyer. I sleep with one. I have three in the, I'm 3 against 1 in the household. My wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, they're all lawyers at the kitchen table. I love lawyers. Home. I respect lawyers because I respect lawyers because they can do things that the rest of us don't do. I went to London to meet, while I was passing through London the other day, I met with nationals one night just to interact with them and so on. And one person came, and the biggest problem that person had was they were paying a lawyer in Trinidad umpteen times. The lawyer wouldn't go to court. They had to come down here and take the lawyer to the disciplinary committee. So these things happen. But let us just say that the lawyers can tell you whatever you want to hear. Madam Speaker, in April 2015, we were in the opposition then. My colleagues are there serving the government. As opposition members, the following question was asked of the central bank: to name and the qualifications of persons employed by the bank between 2012 and 2014, and the process and criteria utilized by the bank to employ these people, and the positions that such persons are appointed to by the bank in their current position. An opposition member filed that. The Parliament cleared the question, it was put to the floor here. And the bank replied, and I quote the reply. This is the government, members on the other side, speaking for the government. The central bank has reviewed the matter and notes that its confidentiality obligations under the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902, are quite broad and extend not only to the affairs of any financial institutions or person registered under the Act, but also the affairs of the central bank itself. The central bank knows that it's obligated to comply with these very strict confidentiality provisions under threat of criminal sanction. And therefore, central bank claimed confidentiality and couldn't tell you who was working there, what criteria they use, and what the people are doing at this point in time as against what they were doing in 2012. There's a general conversation in the country now demanding 100% absence of confidentiality. But the same people who are leading that charge came to the Parliament and said the central bank must be a cloistered place where they can't tell you how many persons they hire, when, or even the salary. And Madam Speaker, that was under a UNC government, with question asked by the PLM opposition. The same or similar question was asked in April 2019 by a UNC member of Parliament, asking about the compensation package paid to the governor of the central bank. In this country, you know the package for the president, the prime minister, and everybody else on the government payroll. But somehow, in the Parliament, a question is asked about the package for the central bank governor, asked by the UNC, and of course, using the precedent set. This is confidential, and it says, and I quote here again, by another minister of another government, this minister in this government, except insofar as may be necessary for the due performance of its objects, every director, officer, and employee of the bank shall preserve and aid in preserving secrecy. So the secrecy of the salary is something that is connected to the due performance of your duty. That's what we're being told. And this government says there's certain information that can come from the central bank which ought not to be treated as confidential.
Like every other bank in the world, because taxpayers pay it.
And the Minister of Finance is saying, by research, all over the world, central banks can make that available. But, Madam Speaker, my colleagues on the other side are saying, in one breath, when they're in the government, that you want confidentiality. When you're out of government, there should be no confidentiality. The central bank, bastion of confidentiality, this government is saying that there is certain kind of administrative information, certain kind of administrative information that could be made available.
Correct.
And my colleagues are saying, no. As a matter of fact, one expert is saying today that the independence of the bank is going to be destroyed. So if we find out that central bank has hired 2,000 people down there and are paying them whatever they want to pay them, we just have to keep quiet and do nothing because we can do nothing about central bank. That's what they're telling us. And if we try to even find out, then you are destroying the confidentiality of the bank. The confidentiality of the bank with respect to banking business, yes. But these questions filed by two governments have nothing to do with banking. It's all administrative. And if members on the other side don't want to support that, then you are being disingenuous and being hypocritical. Because in one breath, in one breath you want total confidentiality where it will obviously damage the country.
Hear what we're asking.
But in a matter like this, opposing for opposition's sake, you stand with the central bank in preserving confidentiality.
Member for Diego Martinez,
and denial.
the original time is now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes to wrap up your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the extension. And you know, Madam Speaker, on this particular matter, just to show you how arguments are being made just for the sake of making argument and creating rah-rah in the country and not supporting matters based on its substance of logic. To all of us in this parliament, both sides, ask for central bank information. And none of that information had to do with banking. It was, and listen, the law that gives central bank its privacy and its banking authority and arm's length arrangement, it says not.
Well, this is what we're asking for.
The minister, we are asking in this matter to disclose salary and other terms and conditions of the governor, deputy governor, officers, and so on. Organizational structure of the bank, number of current or former officers employed at the bank, data information, the number of filled or vacant positions in the structure, and such other matters relating to employment of staff. Now, the Minister of Finance and the government and the country, this is information that could be useful. It has nothing to do with the banking operations in the central bank. And if that is to remain secret, because secrecy is to be preserved, Madam Speaker, how then do you explain that the government says to you, our lifeblood is involved with respect to our business with international oil companies that function all over the world? We negotiate with them. And the commercial arrangements with those companies, for good reason, are to remain secret and confidential, because an absence of confidentiality can have far-reaching commercial consequences. So we enter into memoranda of understanding with these companies to negotiate on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, while there's this demand for total transparency, even when they know the damage that that will do, because many of my colleagues on the other side were in government. They had ministerial positions, including prime ministerial position. They know, and that is why they have never, while they were in government, published the gas price in Trinidad and Tobago for the various contracts. If what they were saying now they believe, when they were in government for 5 years with all those contracts, they would at least have published one of them. But we are in government now to create public disquiet and to give the impression that we are doing something wrong and unacceptable. There's this demand for absence of confidentiality, because all of a sudden there's this appetite for information ad infinitum from top to bottom. No confidentiality except central bank. And we come to this parliament, Madam Speaker, by way of ministerial statement, knowing that the public must have an adequate amount of information even when confidentiality is there. We have to walk a very thin line between informing the public and preserving our commercial confidentialities. That's what we do. And guess what? After the Minister of Energy made his statement here, Madam Speaker, by reference, by comparison, telling the country what came out of our negotiations with those oil companies, I didn't hear anybody say we have given too much information. But I've received from one of those companies a complaint that what we've said to the parliament is in breach of the confidentiality that they expect of us. And I hope that means something to those of you, especially those of you in the opposition, who were in government and who understand what these things mean. Because I do not want to believe that you are making those demands to damage the country. Because we are all in this together. When you think that we didn't give you enough information, just what we've given have already caused disquiet on the part of those we negotiate with. We need to preserve our competitive advantage and our commercial advantages as well. That's what we need to do. And there's no question of scoring political points. There are other points to be scored. But don't try to score points at the expense of destroying the country's commerce. The commerce that gives us a living. Because if they know that they can make no arrangements with us, they wouldn't make any. Because they want us, as we are making these pressing points with them for an improved earning for Trinidad and Tobago, they said to us, we don't want to create any new template that others may want to use. And we operate all over the world. And if we make a good arrangement with you, going beyond what we normally would do, because of the circumstances in Trinidad and Tobago and your environment that we are arguing for, then it ought to be covered by the confidentiality of the clauses. Why are the people of Trinidad and Tobago prepared to shoot themselves in the foot? By demanding that the commercial confidentiality, like a gas price, be published. Of course, there are those who believe it must be, for reasons better known to them. But for us in the government, who know the implications of that and the benefit of not doing it, we will stand where it makes sense in protecting the interests of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And there's one more point I want to make, Madam Speaker, and it is this. I've heard it said, but let me just mention the pension before. Madam Speaker, this pension matter. I know for a fact that there are people in Trinidad and Tobago who believe that members of parliament, particularly ministers, are a waste of time, should not even be paid. In fact, we should pay them for the opportunity. And Madam Speaker, that is par for the course. Not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but maybe around the world. But the bottom line is this, Madam Speaker, there comes a thing that has called responsibility. You see this pension matter? It is the responsibility of a government to deal with. No opposition, except a PNM opposition, will deal with this in the way it ought to be dealt with. You don't believe me, Madam Speaker? Let me explain to you why I said that. I went to South Africa to Nelson Mandela's funeral. And during that trip, I had the opportunity to travel in the same vehicle with the Prime Minister. I was opposition leader then. We traveled to Nelson Mandela's funeral. And we traveled in a vehicle together from our hotels to the funeral. And this matter, this particular matter of the pension issues with the judges and members of parliament was the subject of our discourse. I, as leader of the opposition then, gave, Madam Speaker, I gave the assurance then to the then Prime Minister that we will support the rectification of the issue that she raised with me. That if the government brings it to the parliament, the government can count on opposition support. And the matter was brought to the parliament. The matter was brought to the parliament as per those discussions. But of course, like it is happening now, the minute the matter came to the parliament, and that particular matter came to the parliament with more, there was much more in it. It came to the House, and the opposition supported the government's effort. There was one particular issue in there which we did not feel happy about. But I, as opposition leader, said, okay, we flag it here. We will allow it to go to the Senate and let the independent senators have a say, and we'll finalize it there. So it passed the House, and it went to the Senate. When it got to the Senate, what does the record show? The then government did a complete about turn, disowned the bill that they brought to the parliament, disowned the bill that was passed by them in the majority in this House, abandoned the bill in the Senate, and accused the opposition of being greedy, and tried to pander to public sentiment that this is the opposition wanting more for themselves. Madam Speaker, I hold office in this country at the behest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And if the people of Trinidad and Tobago are happier having people come into public office, thieving to enrich themselves to get a good pension when they leave office, that is what the people will vote for. If, on the other hand, they are prepared to treat their office holders in such a way that you attract the best and the brightest to public office, and those who give their life in public service, like Clinton Bernard, like Marlon Gordon, like John Eckstein and others who serve this country, and at the end of their days can't pay their medical bills because their earnings from their effort in the country cannot meet their medical bills, and they must now die in indignity and wallow in penury. Madam Speaker, we beg to differ. And since it is being put out that we are particularly greedy and that the opposition don't want any part of it, not now or whenever they come into office, I have drafted an amendment, Madam Speaker, which I will attach and circulate, which will say, and I'm going to ask any member of the opposition, I have drafted the amendment, I will give it to the opposition members, and I will ask them at committee stage to put it there, saying that you will act into law, saying that you, as members of this parliament, will not accept any increase or improvement in your pension, and put it in the law. That is the only way that you wouldn't benefit. Don't get up and say you don't want it. Don't get up and say you don't want it. I'm not talking to you, Madam Speaker. Don't get up here and play brave d'age and say you don't want it, knowing full well that when it is passed by the government who you're beating, it passed for you too. Put a clause in there saying that you reject it by a clause in the law, and we'll pass it that way this evening. That is the only way. That is the only way you will not be beneficiaries, and I would not be surprised if some of you do that, because you have already taken care of yourself. Right? So, Madam Speaker, nobody likes to hear about improvements for others, and all kinds of cases can be made. But, Madam Speaker, when it reached the point where people are so beaten down, having served the public, that a UNC minister will come to Balize House to ask for help, when it reached that point, Madam Speaker, I think it has gone very far. Madam Speaker, I had an experience once. A very senior public official in this country got into retirement and lived a long life, and got to a point where he was contemplating suicide. Oh, Lord. I was called by a friend of ours that this is what was happening. Fortunately, Madam Speaker, I had another friend who could have gone with me to this individual to talk him out of that situation, and my other friend who was wealthy enough to undertake to provide that gentleman with sustenance until he died. Madam Speaker, persons who give their life in the public service of Trinidad and Tobago and operate in high office ought not to see that as their future outcome. Madam Speaker, most people will tell you salaries are one thing. Salaries are one thing. But it is, especially in this time, going forward, the economy is where they are, it is a proper pension package that will attract our brightest and our best. And if the country is not prepared to attract the brightest and the best to the bench and to the parliament, then what the country is prepared to take, this government we differ. Madam Speaker, these are not simple issues, but it calls for certain principles. And the principle that we subscribe to is that we do what is right in the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you, Madam Speaker.